So this is part 2 of my Will GTA 6 Be Gory Now series. So I wanted to do a part 2 to this video. A lot of people appeared to misunderstand entirely my last video, and I've had to go and reply to probably like 50 comments. So I'm just going to do a part 2 to this video so I can send people a link. So there's a lot of misconceptions about Grand Theft Auto 6 and I want to clear them up in this video. So firstly, a lot of people are saying it's an M-rated game, adult rated games are not related to gore. M-rated isn't adult rated. M-rated is mature, A-rated is adults only, 18+. So let's just define what an M rating is and an A rating is, and in terms of gore, what the difference between the two is. So on ESRB's website, you can actually read more information about what is defined by each category, but in the M-rated category, there will be scenes of blood and gore, and all of that stuff is acceptable, and if you read into the document that's on their website, it's absolutely fine as long as it's a cutscene or a segment that is short and not prolonged. So i.e. you can't repeatedly do it throughout the game. If you're able to go and behead people throughout the game and cut their arms and legs off and all of that stuff, it then becomes an A-rated game because it's classed as prolonged scenes of violence and gore. M-rated games are usually at the discretion of the parent who's buying the game. So you can play this game ideally at 17+, but there are conditions that in the safety of your own household, a parent can choose if you play the game or not. Now this varies by every single country and it's really hard to define what that means. But in terms of ESRB, now ESRB only really cover Mexico, US, Canada, and I think some other little countries. ESRB define M-rated games by themes of adult nature, not the full game being just 18+. So you'll see at the start of most games or trailers it will say this game or this video contains themes of an adult nature, viewer discretion is advised. That's linked to ESRB's regulations about yes, this is acceptable for most audiences, but there are some adult things in here. For example, blood, whatever it might be, sexual content, whatever it might be. That warning's there to protect people that maybe don't want to see that. So the difference between an M-rated game and an A-rated game is very different. Now an A-rated game is where there's prolonged scenes of violence and gore. Now it's not just violence and gore that determines what an A-rated game is or what an M-rated game is, but a big factor is adult themes such as violence, gore, and of course sexual content. But with prolonged scenes, like you can actually commit the act yourself, you can be the one doing the repeated prolonged act, prolonged being the key word there. That's what usually gets games A ratings. Now we know that Grand Theft Auto 6 will be an M-rated game, mainly because there's a lot of countries out there that won't allow A-rated games to be sold in their stores, and a lot of retailers now don't allow A-rated games to be sold in their stores either. If this affects Rockstar sales by even 1%, they'd make this change, which is something that I mentioned in my previous video. So if it makes a massive difference, like 25-30% of sales value, they will do whatever it takes to bring the game back down to a mature rating. And the next thing we need to talk about is the fact that Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't actually a gory game. Now this is a hot take and a lot of people won't like this. By definition, according to ESRB, so Red Dead Redemption 2 stuck to ESRB's guidelines around fantasy violence and blood and gore. Now blood and blood splatters and stuff, that's not gory in terms of what I was trying to explain in my previous video. Proper gore is like body mutilation, head coming off, arms and limbs being pulled off, and quite graphic, intense elements of gameplay. Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't like that in any way. Yes, there was blood splatters, yes, there was like flying blood through the air, and there was obviously like some gory scenes, like a couple scattered throughout 70 odd hours of gameplay. But what people are inferring in all of these Reddit forums is that we'll be able to like cut people's heads off and chainsaw their heads and arms off and stuff like that. That's a whole different level of gore, and that's the gore I was referring to in the previous video. So by definition, by ESRB's definition, Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't that gory. Yes, it was a bit distasteful in some areas, but it wasn't gory. The next thing I want to talk about is a lot of people have said in GTA 3 you had dismemberment, hands, legs, heads, etc. And in other games that Rockstar have made there have been graphic content such as this. Now, ESRB defines the rules around gore in terms of realism. If it's really realistic, then that causes more of a problem. That will affect how they rate the game. So in GTA 3, where it was a really low poly count for every single model, the gore wasn't realistic in any way, shape or form, and it didn't look like real blood and real stuff. ESRB would have gone a lot lighter on Rockstar back then for that game because it wasn't that intense, it wasn't that realistic, it wasn't comparable to real life. Now with better graphics and more realistic gameplay and more realistic gore, that becomes more of a problem for ESRB because their own rules state that the realism of these scenes is what will help determine what rating the game gets. So there's no point comparing it to games that came out 20 years ago because the level of gore is completely different. Like in Vice City we had chainsaws, and yes, it was a little bit gory for the time, But if you put that in a realistic game engine now and made all of that blood and guts coming out of a person really realistic, that would affect the rating dramatically. Now the next thing is, a lot of people picked me up on something I said, which is my fault because I didn't explain it properly and I should have explained it better. So this is entirely my fault. I mentioned that Red Dead Redemption 2 got away with a lot in terms of some gory elements, and the reason for that was because it was a timepiece. So pretty much every gun back in like the 1800s, 1700s wasn't a precise weapon. It was, anytime you shot a gun in that sort of era, it was pretty messy. It wasn't like we have 9mm today and rifles today that are clean shots. So that's why Rockstar were able to get away with it, because it was encapsulating realism for the time period. Now a lot of people have said, well, what about grenades and stuff in modern day? And that's a very fair point, and like shotguns and stuff. The thing is, it has to be done within context of the game, and it has to be done tastefully. I'm not ESRB. I can't decide what will and will be acceptable. That's up to Rockstar and Take-Two to discuss with ESRB and see what they can get away with. But I just know that we're not going to have people's organs flying out of their bodies and stuff in all of these sequences, because there is no requirement for that. Now a lot of people have stated that not having gore in GTA 6 would make it less realistic. Well, any game where your character can get shot 100 times and still be walking absolutely fine, that's not realistic anyway. These games by default just aren't realistic in many different senses. There's things that they will put time into making realistic, but Rockstar, at the mercy of Take-Two Interactive, aren't going to make full decapitation scenes for every single time you shoot someone in the head or whatever, because it's just going to get the game completely pulled from all stores. It's not going to meet up to the requirements of ESRB. Now, next thing I want to talk about is my research leading up to the last video. So the last video was a very short one and I didn't give it a lot of time, but what I did do is read through ESRB's ratings and their rules and regulations in regards to gore, and that was linked in the description of the last video, and I did mention it, but it's clear that a lot of people didn't even click it. Please, I do recommend, before you leave a comment about how it's going to be the goriest game ever made, you read through that, because it very quickly becomes apparent that Rockstar are very limited with what they can put in the game. So please go and read that through. It will tell you a lot about how games are rated, and especially for M-rated games, which Grand Theft Auto 6 will be an M-rated game. But please read through the rules and regulations regarding ratings of games. You'll be probably really disappointed if you really want gore in GTA 6, like you will be thoroughly disappointed. I would like the game to be a little bit gorier than maybe Red Dead Redemption 2, but the reality is it won't be. But at the same time, I don't think it really matters. If you want to see guts and stuff pouring out of people's bodies, it's a bit of a weird thing to want out of all the cool features we're getting in GTA 6. Like, I think that's on the bottom of the list. I think we'll get a similar sort of level to Red Dead Redemption 2, minus the period-related killings. Like, I don't see Lucia shooting someone's head off and then carrying their head around and stuff and all of this. That's not in context of the game. Maybe I'm entirely wrong, and if I'm entirely wrong, when the game comes out, we'll come back to this video and you can all laugh at me. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I just wanted to make this video to clear up some of the air on this stuff, because I really do think people have been misled or mistaken on what an M-rated game is, and why I was hesitant to think that there would be gore in the game. I knew it would be a controversial topic because every single one of my videos apparently is. So, but thank you all for watching, and if you do have any questions, please pop them in the comments down below, and I'll try and answer as many as I can. But if it's about M-rated games, whatever it is, just click the link in the description of this video, because it will tell you everything you need to know about ESRB's ratings. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.